The rusted key fob lay half buried in dirt, a forgotten relic that would finally unravel a 20-year mystery. When amateur YouTuber Mac Donovan stumbled upon it while exploring abandoned properties in rural Michigan, he had no idea he'd just cracked open one of the state's most baffling cold cases. His trembling hands brushed away decades of soil, revealing the Ford logo, faded but unmistakable. "I almost walked right past it," Donovan would later tell reporters. "Something just caught my eye in that abandoned hunting cabin. Call it fate or luck, but that moment changed everything." 20 years earlier, on Christmas morning 2003, Frank Wilson arrived at the Matthews family home in Millbrook, Michigan, carrying armfuls of presents. As a close family friend, he'd planned a surprise visit to celebrate the holiday. What he found instead would haunt the community for decades. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house stood in perfect, eerie stillness. A Christmas tree glowed in the corner, wrapped presents arranged neatly beneath it. In the kitchen, ingredients for Christmas dinner sat on the counter. Potatoes half peeled, a thawing turkey, cranberry sauce still in the can. 5 stockings hung from the mantel, each embroidered with a family member's name. But the Matthews family, James, Catherine, and their 3 children, had vanished without a trace. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, no explanation. Just 5 people who stepped out of their lives and disappeared into the cold Michigan winter. For 20 years, the case of the missing Matthews family tormented investigators, captivated true crime enthusiasts, and transformed a once trusting community into a place where neighbors viewed each other with suspicion. What happened on that foggy Christmas Eve in 2003? Was it foul play, a government conspiracy, or something else entirely? Today we finally have answers, and they're more shocking than anyone imagined. If you're fascinated by cold cases that get solved decades later, hit subscribe now. This story has twists you won't see coming, and I've got more cases just like it lined up for you. Before we dive deeper into the Matthews family mystery, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing how these stories connect people from all over the world. Now let's rewind to 2003 and meet the family whose disappearance would become Michigan's most perplexing mystery. To understand why the disappearance of the Matthews family shocked Millbrook to its core, you need to understand who they were. Not just names in a police report, but pillars of their community whose absence left a void that couldn't be filled. James Matthews, 42, embodied precision and reliability. A mechanical engineer at Millbrook Industrial Systems for 15 years, he was the kind of man who color-coded his sock drawer and maintained a spreadsheet for household expenses. Colleagues described him as brilliantly methodical, the go-to problem solver when projects went sideways. James wasn't just smart, he was dependable, said Edward Garner, his supervisor. When he said something would be done by Friday at 3 p.m., you could set your watch by it. This made his uncharacteristic behavior in the weeks before the disappearance all the more puzzling. James had been assigned to a classified government project, something he couldn't discuss even with Kate. Co-workers noticed him working late, taking calls in stairwells and locking his office door, behaviors that contradicted his typically transparent work style. It was like watching someone put on a mask, one colleague noted. The James we knew was disappearing before the actual disappearance. Catherine Kate Matthews, 39, balanced James's structured nature with artistic flair. As the elementary school art teacher at Millbrook Elementary, she transformed classroom walls into galleries of childish masterpieces. Parents fought to get their kids into Mrs. Matthews' class, where finger painting became lessons in self-expression and popsicle stick sculptures taught patience. Beyond school, Kate directed the community theatre's annual production and taught Sunday school at First Presbyterian. Her laugh, described by many as musical, could often be heard during town gatherings. But in the months before December 2003, that laugh grew rare. Kate began seeing Dr. Marilyn Foster for anxiety, eventually being prescribed medication for panic attacks. Her sister later revealed that Kate had mentioned feeling watched and needing to protect the children, comments that would take on sinister significance after the family vanished. The Matthews children were as beloved as their parents. 14-year-old Ellie, a freshman at Millbrook High, possessed a gift for piano that had her music teacher predicting Juilliard in her future. Quiet and thoughtful, she kept a journal, never recovered, and had recently withdrawn from her small circle of friends. 10-year-old Jason embodied athletic energy as Millbrook Little League's star pitcher. Unlike his introspective sister, Jason collected friends as easily as baseball cards. His coach described him as the kid who made everyone feel included, organizing neighborhood games and defending smaller children from bullies. The youngest Matthews, their 7-year-old daughter, was known for her vivid imagination and storytelling abilities. Her second-grade teacher recalled how she would captivate classmates with elaborate tales during show and tell. She could spin stories that made even adults stop and listen, the teacher said. She had this gift for making the impossible sound plausible. In Millbrook, population 8,742, the Matthews weren't just residents, they were woven into the community's fabric. James served on the town planning committee. Kate organized the annual art fair that drew tourists from neighboring counties. Their children represented Millbrook's future. Bright, talented young people expected to carry the town's legacy forward. Their Victorian home on Maple Street, with its wraparound porch and meticulously maintained garden, hosted neighborhood barbecues in summer and displayed the most elaborate Christmas lights each winter. The family attended church regularly, volunteered at the food bank, and never missed voting in local elections. They were the family everyone aspired to be, said Diane Lewis, Kate's best friend. Not perfect, they had their struggles like anyone, but solid, the kind of people you'd trust with your house keys or your deepest secrets. This standing in the community made their disappearance all the more incomprehensible. The Matthews weren't drifters or outsiders, they were Millbrook's heart. When they vanished, they took a piece of the town's identity with them. As Detective Marcus Coleman would later tell reporters, when a family like the Matthews disappears, it doesn't just create a mystery, it creates a wound. And wounds like that don't heal until you find answers. Those answers would take 20 years to surface. In retrospect, the warning signs were there: subtle shifts in routine, unexplained behaviors, and mounting tension that, viewed through the lens of hindsight, formed a clear pattern. December 2003 wasn't just the month the Matthews family disappeared. It was when their carefully constructed lives began unraveling thread by thread. The changes started gradually. On December 1st, James Matthews arrived at Millbrook Industrial Systems 30 minutes late, a man who had never missed his 7:30 a.m. start time in 15 years. His co-worker Terence Wilson recalled the moment. He looked like he hadn't slept. When I asked if everything was okay, he just mumbled something about complications and locked himself in his office. This marked the beginning of James's increasingly erratic workplace behavior. Throughout early December, colleagues reported him taking phone calls in the parking lot, closing browser windows when people entered his office, and working late hours on files he wouldn't discuss. The project he'd been assigned carried a government classification level that required special clearance, unusual for Millbrook Industrial, which typically handled commercial contracts. He'd always been an open book, said Patricia Norris, the company receptionist for 20 years. Suddenly he was whispering on calls and looking over his shoulder. When packages arrived marked confidential, he'd grab them before I could log them properly. At home, James's distraction manifested differently. Neighbors noticed the family's garage door opening at odd hours, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and James's car coming and going. The motion-activated security lights he'd installed the previous summer began triggering so frequently that next-door neighbor Harold Benson unplugged his bedroom lamp that faced the Matthews driveway. It was like living next to an airport runway, Benson later told investigators. Lights flashing, car engine starting and stopping. This wasn't the James we knew. Meanwhile, Kate Matthews exhibited her own troubling behaviors. On December 8th, she called in sick to Millbrook Elementary, her first absence of the school year. The substitute teacher found Kate's normally immaculate lesson plans incomplete, with notes scribbled in margins about contingency activities and emergency procedures. Kate's sister, during police interviews, revealed concerning phone conversations from this period. Kate kept asking weird hypothetical questions, like how long I could watch her kids in an emergency, or if my basement could be converted to living space. When I pressed her, She'd say she was just being paranoid. The financial irregularities began on December 10th, when James withdrew $3,000 from their joint savings account, the first of several unusual transactions. Bank records would later show that between December 10th and 22nd, the Matthews liquidated nearly $42,000 from various accounts, including breaking a CD that wasn't set to mature for another year, incurring substantial penalties. On December 15th, Kate visited First National Bank of Millbrook alone. Security footage captured her nervous demeanor as she withdrew $5,000 in cash and requested a cashier's check for another $10,000. The bank manager, concerned by the transaction, asked if everything was all right. She wouldn't make eye contact, he recalled. She just said they were planning home renovations and preferred to pay contractors in cash, but her hands were shaking so badly she dropped her ID twice. That same day, Kate visited 3 different pharmacies to refill her anxiety medication a month early. The third pharmacist finally agreed, noting in her records that Mrs. Matthews appeared distressed and claimed to be going on an extended trip. The children's behaviors shifted too. 14-year-old Ellie abruptly quit piano lessons on December 17th, telling her teacher she might not be around much longer. The teacher assumed she meant the upcoming Christmas break. 10-year-old Jason gave away his prized baseball card collection to his best friend, saying cryptically, "Where we're going, I won't need these." Their 7-year-old daughter told her class during show and tell that she was practicing being someone else. On December 20th, 3 significant events occurred. James emptied his office desk of personal items, explaining to his puzzled supervisor that he was reorganizing. Kate mailed Christmas cards to friends with unusually emotional messages about how much their friendships had meant, and James purchased a prepaid cell phone from Electronics Plus on the outskirts of town. The store clerk remembered the transaction because James paid in cash and bought the most expensive prepaid phone available. He asked which model had the best reception in remote areas, the clerk stated. Then he bought 3 additional batteries and a car charger. Seemed like overkill for a prepaid. December 23rd, the day before their disappearance, brought the final red flags. James called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Kate withdrew the final $5,000 from their checking account. Their home security system logged multiple instances of exterior doors opening and closing between midnight and 4 a.m. A neighbor walking his dog at 5:30 a.m. reported seeing James loading what appeared to be file boxes into the family's Ford Explorer in the pre-dawn darkness. When the neighbor waved, James didn't wave back, just quickly closed the tailgate and returned inside. The stage was set for whatever would happen next. Within 24 hours, the Matthews family would drive away from Millbrook, Michigan, and into 2 decades of mystery. December 24, 2003, began with fresh snowfall across Millbrook. The Matthews home, usually first on the block to display Christmas lights, remained dark until 7:15 a.m. when lights flickered on throughout the house. Neighbors reported seeing normal morning activity, curtains opening, chimney smoke rising as the family's wood stove was lit. At 8:30 a.m., the mail carrier delivered several packages, which Kate accepted at the door. She appeared distracted but polite, declining his offer of holiday cookies with an apologetic smile. This would be the last time any neighbor interacted with the family. By 10:00 a.m., unusual activity began. The Matthews typically attended the Christmas Eve morning service at First Presbyterian, but their regular pew remained empty. Pastor Robert Wilson called their home at 10:15 a.m., concerned about their absence, but received no answer. At 10:42 a.m., home security logs would later show all 5 family members exiting the house. Critically, James, a man obsessed with home security who once returned home from a vacation 2 hours away because he couldn't remember if he'd set the alarm, left without activating the system. The front door was locked but not deadbolted. The back door remained unlocked entirely. In 15 years of friendship, I never once saw James leave that house without setting that alarm, Frank Wilson later testified. He'd check it twice, sometimes 3 times. For him to leave it off on Christmas Eve, when the house was full of presents? Impossible, unless something was very wrong. The family's Ford Explorer was captured on the ATM security camera at Millbrook Bank at 12:15 p.m. James remained in the driver's seat while Kate used the ATM. Their 3 children were visible in the back seat, apparently watching a portable DVD player. None appeared distressed. At 1:45 p.m., a state trooper's dashboard camera briefly captured the Matthews vehicle heading north on Highway 127. All 5 family members were visible, with James driving slightly under the speed limit, again uncharacteristic for a man known for precision timing. The gas station in Mount Pleasant, about 45 miles north of Millbrook, recorded the family stopping for fuel at 2:30 p.m. Security footage showed James pumping gas while Kate took the children inside. They purchased snacks, bottled water, and a road atlas of Michigan. The attendant remembered them because the little girl was singing Christmas carols loudly, and her mother kept shushing her, looking around nervously. At 4:15 p.m. came the final confirmed sighting at Claire Cafe, a small diner another 30 miles north. The waitress who served them recalled the family seemed tense, speaking little. The parents kept checking their phones and looking out the window. They ordered food but barely touched it. The kids seemed confused, like they didn't understand what was happening. The family left the diner at approximately 4:50 p.m., heading northwest toward Muskegon River. A snowplow driver reported seeing a vehicle matching their explorer's description traveling on back roads around 6:30 p.m., an unusual route given the deteriorating weather conditions. The final potential sighting came from a local fisherman who reported headlights disappearing into thick fog near the Muskegon River boat launch at approximately 9 p.m. He thought little of it until news of the missing family broke days later. By 11:45 p.m., when Frank Wilson arrived at the Matthews home for his planned Christmas surprise, the family had been gone for over 13 hours. Their Christmas tree lights still twinkled. Presents remained wrapped. Dinner ingredients sat untouched. 5 stockings hung empty. The Matthews family had vanished into the snowy Michigan night. What time is it where you're watching? The Matthews family vanished at 9 p.m. on Christmas Eve, a time when most families were gathering together, not disappearing without a trace. This mystery gets deeper with every detail. Like this video and hit the notification bell to see more unsolved cases like this one. The investigation that followed would lead detectives down countless dead ends before the shocking truth would finally emerge. Dawn broke on Christmas Day with Frank Wilson's frantic 911 call. "They're gone, all of them. Something's wrong," he told the dispatcher between labored breaths. "The Matthews family. They wouldn't just leave like this." Millbrook police officer Daniel Hayes arrived first, expecting a routine welfare check. Instead, he found a scene that would launch the most extensive investigation in county history. The house was perfect. Too perfect, Hayes noted in his initial report. Like they'd staged it for a real estate showing, not like they'd left in a hurry. By noon, Detective Marcus Coleman had taken charge of the case. A 20-year veteran with a reputation for methodical thoroughness, Coleman immediately recognized the unusual nature of the disappearance. No signs of struggle, no evidence of forced entry, but clear indications of planned departure, he dictated into his recorder. This isn't a typical missing persons case. The first 48 hours focused on the Muskegon River area, where the fishermen had reported seeing headlights disappear into fog. Search and rescue operations deployed 4 boats, underwater sonar, and cadaver dogs along a 7-mile stretch of riverbank. Divers braved near-freezing water temperatures but found nothing. Winter conditions severely hampered efforts. A blizzard on December 26th dropped 8 inches of snow, obliterating any potential tire tracks or footprints. Temperatures plunged to -15 degrees, forcing divers out of the water and grounding helicopter searches. Mother Nature was working against us from day one, Coleman later told reporters. Every hour that passed, evidence disappeared under snow or ice. While the river search continued, a secondary team processed the Matthews home. What they found, or rather didn't find, deepened the mystery. The house contained no signs of violence or hasty packing. Christmas presents remained wrapped under the tree, including expensive gifts for all 3 children. The refrigerator contained fresh food. Bills were paid through January, yet certain items were conspicuously absent. James's home office showed evidence of selective file removal. The family's passports were missing from their usual location in the fireproof safe. A suitcase inventory revealed one medium-sized duffel bag missing from each family member's closet set. Most puzzling was the home computer. Forensic analysis showed someone had performed a military-grade wipe of the hard drive at 3:17 a.m. on December 24th. This wasn't a standard deletion, the tech analyst reported. This was the kind of wipe used by government agencies, multiple overwrites designed to make data unrecoverable. By December 30th, the investigation had expanded to include state police and FBI resources. Roadblocks and checkpoints yielded no sightings of the family's Ford Explorer. Credit cards remained unused. Cell phones went straight to voicemail, then stopped connecting altogether on December 27th. The search for the vehicle produced a series of dead ends. A similar Explorer spotted in Chicago turned out to belong to a traveling salesman. A report of the Matthews license plate in Indianapolis proved to be a transcription error. The family's vehicle had vanished as completely as they had. On January 3, 2004, the case took a dramatic turn when James's employer, Millbrook Industrial Systems, finally disclosed the nature of his classified project. James had been reverse engineering components for military drone technology, work with potential national security implications. This revelation brought FBI counterintelligence specialists into the investigation. Suddenly, we weren't just looking at a missing family, Coleman recalled. We were looking at potential espionage, technology theft, or witness protection scenarios. The FBI's involvement shifted the investigation's focus. Agents interviewed James's colleagues, scrutinized his work computer, and investigated potential foreign connections. They discovered James had accessed classified files remotely on December 22nd and 23rd, files that were now missing from both his work and home computers. Kate's background received similar scrutiny. Investigators learned she had briefly studied abroad in Russia during college, a fact that took on new significance given James's work. Her recent therapy sessions, obtained via warrant, revealed increasing paranoia about being watched and followed. The children's teachers and friends were interviewed extensively. Ellie's piano teacher mentioned the girl had asked unusual questions about Canada during her final lesson. Jason's baseball coach recalled the boy saying his family might be moving far away after Christmas. Their 7-year-old daughter's teacher remembered her drawing pictures of mountains, geography not found in flat Millbrook. As January turned to February, the investigation hit a wall. Every promising lead evaporated upon closer examination. The river search was officially suspended. The Matthews extended family offered a $50,000 reward for information, generating hundreds of tips, but no breakthroughs. Then came the pattern interrupt, the detail that would confound investigators for years. On February 12th, a highway maintenance worker found a child's backpack in a rest area trash can 175 miles northwest of Millbrook. Inside was a school notebook with Ellie Matthews written on the cover. Forensics confirmed it belonged to the missing 14-year-old, but the backpack contained something impossible. A receipt from a gas station in Sault Ste. Marie, dated December 26th, 2 days after the family's disappearance into fog by the Muskegon River, and in the opposite direction from their last known trajectory. That backpack changed everything, Coleman said. Either they hadn't gone into the river at all, or someone wanted us to think they'd headed toward Canada instead. Either way, it meant we'd been looking in the wrong place all along. The investigation was about to enter its long, cold phase. As months stretched into years, the Matthews family case transformed from breaking news into a persistent, unsolved mystery. The investigation entered what Detective Coleman called the Long Winter, a 2-decade period of false hopes, dead ends, and gradually diminishing resources. By summer 2004, the active investigation had been downgraded to a cold case. Coleman, who had postponed his retirement to continue working the disappearance, finally handed over his files to a younger detective. "I'm giving you my life's biggest failure," he told Detective Sandra Reeves during the transition. "Don't let it become yours too." Reeves led the second investigative team from 2004 to 2007, pursuing the Canadian angle suggested by Ellie's backpack. Her team established that the Matthews Explorer had never officially crossed the border, but the 5,000-mile US-Canada boundary offered countless unofficial crossing points. Working with Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Reeves investigated dozens of reported sightings across Ontario and Quebec, all leading nowhere. The third team, under Detective Joseph Martinez, 2007-2012, focused on the espionage theory. Martinez, a former military intelligence officer, believed James Matthews had either sold drone technology secrets or been recruited as an asset by a foreign government. His team traced international money transfers and investigated potential safe houses in 12 countries. Despite an exhaustive global search, no concrete evidence emerged linking the family to any foreign entity. Detective William Parker's team, 2012-2016, revisited the possibility of foul play. They drained a 3-mile section of the Muskegon River that had been inaccessible during the original search, finding nothing but waterlogged debris and a 1970s motorcycle. Ground-penetrating radar scanned miles of riverbank and surrounding forest, revealing only natural formations and animal burrows. The fourth team also investigated Vincent Porter, a local businessman with organized crime connections, who had renovated several properties in early 2004. Porter's alibi for Christmas Eve 2003 proved solid, and searches of his properties yielded no evidence connecting him to the Matthews. The fifth and seemingly final investigative team, led by Detective Alicia Washington, 2016-2020, pursued the theory that the family had voluntarily disappeared to escape some unknown threat. Washington's team created an age progression analysis of all 5 family members and distributed the images nationwide. Hundreds of tips flooded in, sending investigators to Alaska, Florida, New Mexico, and Hawaii, all false alarms. After a while, you start to wonder if they ever existed at all, Washington confessed in a 2019 interview. 5 people don't just vanish without leaving some trace somewhere. As the investigation stalled, competing theories proliferated. Internet sleuths created forums dedicated to the case, analyzing every detail and constructing increasingly elaborate scenarios. Some believed the family had entered witness protection after James exposed corruption at Millbrook Industrial. Others were convinced Kate had discovered her husband's involvement in espionage and fled with the children. The most extreme theories suggested government black ops or even alien abduction. Meanwhile, Millbrook itself transformed. The once trusting community installed security systems and neighborhood watch programs. Parents no longer allowed children to play unsupervised. The annual Christmas parade, once routed past the Matthews' elaborately decorated home, was permanently rerouted. The Matthews house became both shrine and tourist attraction. After distant relatives inherited the property in 2008, they donated it to the town with the stipulation it remain exactly as it was on the day the family disappeared. Volunteer caretakers maintained the property, replacing perishable items but preserving the wrapped presents, family photos, and children's schoolwork. Each Christmas Eve, the community held a vigil outside the home. The first gathering in 2004 drew over 500 people. By 2020, attendance had dwindled to a dedicated few dozen, mostly older residents who remembered the family personally. Diane Lewis, Kate's best friend, attended every vigil. "I keep coming because someone should remember them as people, not just as a mystery," she told a documentary crew in 2018. "They were real, they mattered, and somewhere, somehow, I believe they still exist." By 2020, the case had consumed 5 detective teams, thousands of man-hours, and millions in resources. The file had grown to occupy an entire cabinet in the Millbrook Police Department. Yet the fundamental questions remained unanswered. What happened to the Matthews family? Did they choose to disappear, or did someone make them vanish? What's the weather like today where you are? In Michigan, harsh winters hampered the original search for the Matthews family, a reminder of how environmental conditions can impact even the most determined investigations. Cases like this remind us how quickly lives can change. Share this video with someone who appreciates true crime and the complex mysteries that sometimes go decades without answers. March 15, 2023, marked 20 years and 3 months since the Matthews family vanished. The case file had been transferred to Detective Riley Hoffman, a 32-year-old investigator who hadn't even been in high school when the family disappeared. Fresh out of the FBI Academy at Quantico, Hoffman had specifically requested the Matthews case despite warnings it would likely remain unsolved. "I grew up in Millbrook," Hoffman explained to his skeptical captain. "That empty house on Maple Street was our town's haunted mansion. Every kid knew the story. I want to be the one who finally brings them home." For 3 years, Hoffman methodically reviewed the massive case file, re-interviewed aging witnesses, and applied modern forensic techniques to preserved evidence. Despite his dedication, the breakthrough that would finally crack the case came not from police work, but from an unlikely source, a YouTube channel with barely 3,000 subscribers. Mac Donovan, a 28-year-old urban explorer from Grand Rapids, ran Michigan's Forgotten Places, a channel documenting abandoned buildings throughout the state. On April 2, 2023, Donovan and his camera operator hiked 5 miles into the Manistee National Forest to film an abandoned hunting cabin rumored to be haunted. "We were just looking for cool content," Donovan later explained. "The cabin was nothing special, collapsed roof, rotting walls. I was actually disappointed because it wasn't creepy enough for my channel." As Donovan filmed his standard walkthrough, his foot broke through the deteriorating floorboards. Reaching down to steady himself, his hand closed around something metallic buried in the dirt beneath the cabin. He pulled out a rusted Ford key fob caked with 2 decades of soil. "I almost tossed it aside," Donovan admitted. "Then I noticed the little personalized tag still attached to the ring. It said JM with a phone number that had mostly rusted away. Something about it felt important." Donovan included the key fob discovery in his video, titled "Creepy Abandoned Cabin Deep in Michigan Woods," uploaded on April 10th. 3 days later, a viewer commented, "That key fob looks like the one from the Matthews family case. The dad's initials were JM. You should call police." When Donovan contacted the Millbrook Police Department, Detective Hoffman immediately drove the 170 miles to meet him. Within hours, they were hiking back to the cabin, accompanied by a forensic team. The site was approximately 15 miles from where the fishermen had reported seeing headlights disappear near the Muskegon River in 2003. "The moment I saw that key fob, I knew," Hoffman recalled. The partial phone number matched the Matthews home line. The style matched Ford Explorers from that era. After 20 years, we finally had something tangible. The forensic team dismantled the cabin's remaining floorboards, revealing a disturbing discovery. Scratched into one of the support beams was a partial vehicle identification number. When cross-referenced with DMV records, it matched the last 8 digits of the Matthews Explorer. "Someone had tried to conceal evidence here," Hoffman noted. "The question was, who and what else were they hiding?" Ground-penetrating radar scanned the soil beneath and surrounding the cabin, but detected no large metal objects or disturbed earth consistent with a buried vehicle. However, cadaver dogs brought to the scene alerted strongly to the cabin's northeast corner before tracking a scent 400 yards east to the edge of an abandoned mining operation. The North Star Mining Company had operated in the area from 1965 until 1998, extracting copper before environmental regulations made the operation unprofitable. The company had sealed the main shaft and auxiliary tunnels according to regulations, then abandoned the site. Property records revealed something crucial. The land had been purchased in January 2004 by Horizon Development LLC, a shell company that Detective Martinez's team had investigated years earlier, but dismissed as unrelated. Hoffman obtained an emergency warrant to search the mining property. On April 17, 2023, a team including mining engineers, forensic specialists, and search and rescue personnel breached the sealed main entrance. Inside, they found evidence of recent human activity. Food wrappers dated 2003, a child's shoe matching the brand worn by the Matthews' youngest daughter, and most significantly, fresh concrete poured over a section of the mine floor. "The concrete was the red flag," said Dr. Eliza Montgomery, the forensic anthropologist who accompanied the team. "It was clearly newer than the mine's operational period, poured sometime in early 2004 according to our analysis. And it had been poured in a hurry, uneven, with air pockets and poor mixing. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the concrete slab, shapes consistent with human remains. Over the next 3 days, forensic teams carefully removed the concrete and excavated the area beneath. What they found confirmed their worst fears and solved the 20-year mystery. We recovered biological evidence from all 5 family members, Montgomery confirmed in her preliminary report. DNA analysis matched samples from the Matthews home and extended family members. Further excavation revealed additional evidence: James's company ID badge, Kate's distinctive turquoise necklace, Ellie's school backpack matching the one found years earlier, suggesting the Canadian receipt had been planted as misdirection, Jason's baseball glove, and a stuffed unicorn belonging to their youngest child. Most damning was a waterproof case containing James's work files, the classified drone technology documents that had gone missing. Several pages showed evidence of having been photographed or copied. The physical evidence told us what happened, Hoffman explained, but it didn't tell us who was responsible or why they targeted this family. That answer came from an unexpected source: Thomas Reed, the former FBI agent who had briefly taken over the case in 2005. Now suffering from advanced dementia, Reed had been moved to a memory care facility in 2021. Among his personal effects, discovered by his daughter while clearing his apartment, was a sealed envelope marked "Matthews, Confidential, Destroy After My Death." Inside was the final piece of the puzzle, a piece so shocking it would send ripples through federal law enforcement and the Millbrook community alike. "When I opened that envelope," Hoffman said, "I realized we weren't just solving a murder case. We were exposing a conspiracy that went far beyond one family's disappearance." The sealed envelope from Thomas Reed contained a handwritten confession, a thumb drive, and photographs that would shatter 2 decades of speculation. Reed, once a rising star in the FBI's counterintelligence division, had documented his involvement in what he called the necessary sacrifice of the Matthews family. According to Reed's confession, James Matthews had inadvertently discovered that the drone technology he was reverse engineering contained critical flaws that had already resulted in a classified incident where an experimental drone had crashed in a Middle Eastern country, killing 3 American operatives. James had documented these flaws and prepared a report for his superiors. What James didn't know was that his supervisor, Edward Garner, had been the original designer of the flawed system. Garner stood to lose millions in government contracts if James's report became public. When James shared his concerns privately with Garner in early December 2003, Garner contacted Reed, his former college roommate who now worked for the FBI. "I made a decision that haunted me every day since," Reed wrote in his confession. "I convinced myself it was for national security, but it was really about protecting Edward and the money we both stood to make from the drone program." Reed detailed how he had placed the Matthews family under surveillance, intercepting their calls and monitoring their movements. When he discovered James had created backup files of his findings, Reed escalated the situation. He approached the family on December 23rd, falsely claiming they were in danger from foreign operatives who wanted James's research. "I told them I could get them into witness protection, but they needed to leave immediately and tell no one," Reed's confession continued. "Kate was suspicious, but James believed me when I showed my FBI credentials. They agreed to follow my instructions to protect their children." On Christmas Eve, Reed led the family to the abandoned mining operation, claiming it was a temporary safe house before their formal entry into witness protection. There, in the darkness of the mine, Edward Garner was waiting. The confession detailed how Garner executed the family while Reed stood by, then how the 2 men concealed the bodies beneath the hastily poured concrete. "We planted the backpack with the Canadian receipt to mislead investigators," Reed wrote. "We scattered false leads for years. I used my position in the FBI to derail the investigation whenever it came close to the truth." The thumb drive contained video footage from Reed's personal camera, insurance he had kept against Garner, showing portions of the crime and the aftermath. The images provided irrefutable evidence of what had occurred in the mine that Christmas Eve. On April 30th, 2023, police arrested Edward Garner, now 78, at his retirement home in Arizona. The once respected engineer offered no resistance when Detective Hoffman placed him in handcuffs. "I wondered when you'd finally come," was all he said. The arrest shocked the Millbrook community and the nation. Garner had remained in town for years after the disappearance, even attending the annual vigils for the Matthews family. He had retired in 2010 with full honors from Millbrook Industrial, moving to Arizona only after his wife's death in 2018. "He sat next to me at the 10th anniversary vigil," Diane Lewis recalled, her voice breaking. "He held a candle and said prayers for them, knowing exactly where they were the whole time." The investigation revealed how seemingly unrelated clues had actually pointed to Garner and Reed all along. The classified project files missing from James's office had been removed by Garner himself. The military-grade wipe of the Matthews home computer had been performed using FBI software Reed had access to. The prepaid phone James purchased had been at Reed's instruction to maintain secure communications. Most disturbing was the discovery that Vincent Porter, the businessman investigated years earlier, had been paid by Garner to purchase the mining property through his shell company, Horizon Development. Porter confessed to his role in exchange for immunity, admitting he had suspected something criminal, but had never known the details. When news of the arrests broke, Millbrook transformed overnight. Hundreds gathered spontaneously outside the Matthews home, bringing flowers, candles, and teddy bears. Schools closed for a day of remembrance. The town council unanimously voted to create a permanent memorial in the Central Park. "It's like we can finally breathe again," said Mayor Wilson, who had been Frank Wilson's son, the family friend who discovered the empty house on Christmas morning 2003. "For 20 years this mystery has defined our town. Now we can grieve properly and eventually heal." On June 15, 2023, Edward Garner was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. Reed, who had died in his care facility just weeks after Hoffman discovered his confession, escaped earthly justice, but not history's judgment. His FBI career was posthumously expunged, his commendations revoked. The Matthews family was finally laid to rest in Millbrook Cemetery on July 8, 2023, with over 2,000 people attending the service. 5 white caskets, arranged from largest to smallest, were lowered into adjacent plots beneath a single headstone reading, "The Matthews family, together in life, together in eternity." For the extended Matthews family, the resolution brought a complex mixture of grief and relief. James's sister, who had spent 20 years and her entire inheritance funding private investigators, spoke at a press conference following Garner's arraignment. "We always knew they didn't just drive away to start a new life," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. "James and Kate loved Millbrook. They loved their home. They would never have abandoned their community without saying goodbye. Now we can stop searching and start remembering." Kate's parents, now in their 80s, lived just long enough to see their daughter's case solved. "My mother held on for this," Kate's brother explained. "She passed away 3 weeks after the funeral, finally at peace knowing where her daughter and grandchildren rest." The case's resolution rippled beyond the Matthews family. The FBI launched an internal investigation into how Reed had manipulated the case for so long. 3 additional agents were eventually implicated in helping conceal evidence, leading to a major restructuring of the Bureau's Internal Affairs Division. Millbrook Industrial Systems, tainted by its association with Garner, closed its doors in August 2023. The building was purchased by the town and is being converted into a community center named after the Matthews family. The drone technology at the heart of the case became public during Garner's trial. Military analysts confirmed James Matthews had been correct. The design contained critical flaws that had resulted in multiple failures and lost lives. Had his report been allowed to reach the proper authorities, those deaths might have been prevented. James Matthews died trying to save lives he didn't even know were at risk, noted the prosecutor during opening statements. His integrity cost him and his family everything. Detective Riley Hoffman, whose persistence finally broke the case, received the FBI Director's Award for Excellence, a bittersweet honor given the Bureau's role in the cover-up. Hoffman dedicated the award to Detective Marcus Coleman, who had died in 2019, still believing he had failed the Matthews family. "Coleman got it right from the beginning," Hoffman acknowledged. "He suspected an inside job with government connections. If he'd been allowed to follow that thread, this family might have received justice decades sooner." Despite the comprehensive resolution, some questions linger. Why did Kate withdraw so much cash if they were being led by someone they trusted? Did the children suspect something was wrong during that final drive? And perhaps most hauntingly, at what moment did the family realize they had been betrayed? These questions may never be answered, but the Matthews case has forever changed how law enforcement approaches missing persons investigations, particularly those with potential connections to classified work or government agencies. The abandoned hunting cabin where Mac Donovan found the key fob has become an unofficial memorial site. Visitors leave small tokens, coins, flowers, toy cars, in tribute to the family and the chance discovery that finally brought them home. Don't miss our next investigation. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell to be notified when we explore more cases where justice was delayed but not ultimately denied. What aspect of this case surprised you most? The government cover-up? The accidental discovery that broke it open? Or how close the family came to exposing the truth before they were silenced? Let me know below in the comments. In Millbrook, Michigan, Christmas Eve will never be the same. But after 20 years of questions, the town finally has answers, and 5 souls have finally found peace.